Will we be starting off in the estimates package or the finance committee package?
We'll be commencing with estimates, Councilor.
We are live.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome. We're in estimates now. To follow will be finance. Immediately afterwards, Councilor Martin's unavailable tonight. He's doing the Lord's work representing council at the Grand Bridge Energy meeting. He should have been there too. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for attending. Juan, you have the attendance, I presume?
Through the chair, the roll has been taken, yes.
I presume there are no conflicts of interest as I've seen none come across our desk today. We don't have any presentations. We don't have any delegations. We do have some folks to welcome. Welcome. And Russ is going to be online, we said. Is that correct? Trying. Okay. All right. So may I get a mover and seconder for what's before us tonight? Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Celeste, thank you very much for that. Now, we've only got 4.1 before us tonight. I think we're going to be a little less formal than we ordinarily are. And even though the ambulance staff are not our staff, I think we'll consider them to be our staff for purposes of procedural rules for tonight, if that's okay. So everybody has 2 speaking opportunities of 4 minutes each, and your speaking opportunity needn't be restricted to questions or comments. Use it however the heck you want. So if I could ask for speakers to this item. Does anybody want to talk? Well, okay. Bear with me a second. So I do have a number of questions. There's indication of the need for a new ambulance station. Can ambulance staff state the criteria for the site selection for a new station? Don't be afraid to say no.
Through the chair, thank you for welcoming us to your committee this afternoon. So your questions regarding the requirement for a new station,
Correct.
or is it for a new shift?
The physical station. The bricks, the mortar, the roof, place where the ambulances will live and the staff will report to. I believe
Okay.
there's a requirement for a new station.
We do have a new station lease accounted for in the 2025 budget. And that was approved through Paramedic Services Committee previously. And the lease was finalized earlier this year. There were, I guess, several years involved in terms of determining what was required for the station in terms of size, location, what facilities were required.
There is a location.
There is a location.
Where would that be?
It's on Savannah Oaks Drive.
Okay.
Yes.
Does that put to bed the old station on Charing Cross Street, or am I behind the times?
Yeah, to the chair, there is no longer a station on Charing Cross, but I can advise that there are 2 leases on Henry Street right now in Brantford that would no longer be required, as well as a temporary location we're using in Canesville.
Super. Thank you very much for that. This budget requires the hiring of a new supervisor. That may not be your nomenclature, but it's a supervisory position. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And is that necessary because you're taking on considerably more staff?
I see our chief online, so I'm going to defer that question to Chief King.
Good move. Chief, welcome.
Thank you very much, sir. And through you, Mr. Chair, the additional supervisor role is a 0.5. We've been sharing a half of a supervisor role with the expanding community paramedic services that we're providing to both the County of Brant and City of Brant. It was just actually fulfilling a half point. As the CP has grown, we've basically had more requests for services. The CP program is excellent because it basically helps us defer about 5,000 or more calls annually from the overall burden 911 system. It was just making a half a point to a full point. And we agreed to the ambulance committee that we would not start that until, I believe, July 1st or October 1st to realize Ministry of Health funding.
Thank you for that, Chief. And one last question for you. Excuse me for the tickle in my throat. So you collect folks from city and county and you take them to hospitals. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
So if you collect somebody in Canesville, what hospital would you take them to?
To you, Mr. Chair, on most occasions, unless it's determined otherwise, it would be the Brantford General Hospital.
What about somebody from Burford? Where would you take them?
Through you, Mr. Chair, again, there's 5 different criteria. It's the need for emergency intervention, preferred doctors, preferred history at another hospital. Say the resident lived in Burford and they could endure the ride. They could go to basically Woodstock, or they could basically, if they're on the border of Ayr, they could go to a Waterloo hospital. But there is 5-step criteria that the ministry provides to us on where the patient would go by like the top 5 different criteria.
So the sicker they are, the closer you go to the closest hospital or to the hospital?
That is correct. Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. Unless it is a trauma and it is basically on the highway, we can make it down to the Hamilton General, the trauma center, within 30 to 40 minutes. That would be the best outcome for the patient and the best treatment.
So not to put words in your mouth, but would you say that most county patients would go to Brantford General Hospital?
Both county and city city residents would go to the Brantford General Hospital.
So the majority?
That is correct. I would say 98%.
98%. Okay,
Correct.
thank you for that, Chief. I'll be looking for other speakers now. Councilor Carpenter, you have the floor, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the option before us is our option A and option B, Mr. Chair, is that correct?
Nothing gets by you, Councilor.
Okay, so why would option A, which is March 1st, be 8 FTEs? And option B would be July 1st, 4 full-times FTEs. So is it, how many ambulances is that going to be for both A and B?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the ambulance committee has done an excellent job. With the amount of call volume and the increase that are people coming into our community, we had originally asked for a 24-hour vehicle, which would have been 8 staff members as of March 1st. We were able to work through the ambulance committee and the group that we figured that if we would start an ambulance, a 12-hour vehicle permanently, basically on day shifts, we could go through until our overall service optimization review is completed by the end of 2025. We only asked for a 12-hour ambulance, which resulted into 4 staff members at that point in time.
Now, and the province will pay 50% of last year's budget. So whatever we don't put in this year's budget, we won't get it till next year. Or our 50%. Is that how this works?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's the simplest explanation. We're always a year behind of recouping the funds that the province provides to us.
So when we put the funding in from last year's budget increase and the province is paying 50% more this year, doesn't that show up in your budget as a reduction since we were paying for 100% of it in the original budget?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would have to refer that back to General Manager Cindy Stevenson.
Through the chair, maybe an example would be in the 2024 budget, council's approved a new commander position, and it was to start on July 1st of this year. Because of the funding model through the province, both municipalities essentially paid 100% of that in 2024. In 2025, that position is budgeted for the full year.
Yeah, we got half.
But the municipalities will essentially receive 50% of the 6 months that were budgeted for in 2024.
Yeah, so we don't get that. So that shortfall is what makes it up the following year.
Through the chair, that's correct. So one of the budget drivers for 2025 is annualizing that commander position from this year.
Either way, we funded 100% at the beginning of the year and get it half of it paid for it the next year. We're still caught up, whether it's 6 months or 8 months or, well. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Counselor, thank you. Counselor Celeste, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Probably appropriate for the chief. The remodeling of the emergency department at the BGH, did that not improve the offloading problem?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the remodeling of the Brantford General Hospital has not been completed interiorly. It has had the exterior changed, but the next phase of the program has not changed on the main floor where the current emergency department is right now.
Is that anticipated to be done shortly?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I like your word shortly, but it could be anywhere from another year to 18 months of expanding at the emergency department. Through what I have learned is it's expanding its footprint, but I believe it is not expanding the amount of beds that will be in the emergency department. It'll be their role of ending hallway medicine and having people in the hallways and having more rooms for the appropriate treatments.
So it's not going to impact your problem?
It is not going to impact our problem, but currently we are working directly with the Deputy Minister of Health to help improve our offload delays. There has been some slight improvements, but the ministry has guaranteed us that they are not leaving until the overall offload delay problem has been corrected or pointed in the right direction. The city of Hamilton went through the same thing as being one of the worst for offload delays. And now I think they're ranked 6th in the overall province for improvement in offload delays. And we continue to work with the ministry to improve our situation.
Okay. We've been dealing with that situation for years. We were dealing with it when I was on the on your committee. So we really made no progress at all then.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are now making progress because we have the ministry involved. And the new team at the Brantford General, including the CAO, is committed to change things and get our crews back on the road quicker. They have a brand new team, and we've been working with them for the last 6 to 8 months, and we see their commitment and the improvement. The issue we saw over the past couple of years is the in and out of some of the upper management team not staying, but it looks like they've built a good team now to help work through our offload problems.
Okay, and just finally on that same, I hate to harp on it, but I think that's really where the bottleneck happens. And you'll have in the past 7, 8, 10 ambulances sitting there waiting to offload and they're tied up and obviously not available to deal with an emergency. Is the problem physical or is the problem human resource with the hospital?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the problem is A, our call volume is up. B, it's the amount of real estate that they have to put patients into. There's so many people out in all communities across the province of Ontario that don't have family doctors that rely on the emergency department from their small to large problems. And the hospital is, as I said, we were working with the team. They are aggressively having a campaign about people applying and filling the vacant roles. So once all those 3 components start to move forward, we should see improvements, and we're working with them to help through it. But I've seen a decrease in the amount of offload delays, or not as much as a decrease, it's the amount of time. We've seen delays for offloads 4, 5, 6, 7 hours sometimes. Now I believe our maximum offload that I've seen over the last couple of months is 2 to 3 hours. So that is a good downward trend to get our crews back on the road.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor, thank you. Mayor Davis, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to county staff. Could you please confirm for us again the decisions that the Paramedics Oversight Committee made in respect to the options? Staffed ambulance, and there's various options, options A and B. Just confirm what the recommendation was of the Oversight Governance Committee?
Through the chair. Paramedic Services Committee approved 2 of the 3 decision packages that were put forward. One being the 0.5 superintendent, and that was option B to start on July 1st, 2025. Committee also approved an additional staffed ambulance, and that was also option B, 12-hour vehicle for 4 FTEs to start July 1st, 2025.
And the one that was not approved, that was the superintendent. No, pardon me, that was the commander, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So, Chair, I'd like to put on the floor, I think our package included the same kind of options for consistency's sake. Option B, superintendent, option B, the additional ambulance. To be consistent.
Mayor, what's before us is a blank for us to approve an option. I believe there are 2 cited. One
Yep.
is to approve the budget as provided, the other
Yep.
is to respond to counties.
Okay, sorry about that. So I'd say this, that I'm on the Oversight Committee, and Chief Kings is right. I mean, one issue is the offloading delays at the hospital due to a number of different factors. The statistics show that with some change in management at the hospital, filling some staffing positions, it does seem to be getting better. It really was, it was a difficult situation late last year, certainly. It is improving. The other issue is the way in which the ambulance paramedics are dispatched. There's really no triaging that's occurring in the dispatching. And there is a system elsewhere in the province where there is triaging. So paramedics are attending to the most serious calls. My understanding from Chief Kings is that will be hopefully coming into our area within the next year. Is that right, Chief Kings, within the next year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, you are correct. It's the new MPDS system that has been installed in different 911 dispatch centers across the province. We're slated for late 2025. The province is doing their best to accelerate that to our community. Hamilton, Six Nations, Norfolk, and Haldimand all at the same time. Their dispatch center is located in Hamilton.
Right. So could you imagine police being dispatched without triaging? So that the lowest type of severity police call gets the same priority as something that's more serious. That's the situation with paramedics. Very unfortunate. The other issue is, my view of the statistics that we get each month is probably around 20% of the calls would be 20 years ago. Those would be people that would be going to their family doctor or walk-in clinic. And so the shortage of family doctors is having a dramatic impact on the demand for paramedic services. And that's something that's beyond the control of us locally, other than, of course, through our doctor recruitment program, trying to get family doctors in here. So we have fewer people in our community that do not have family doctors. It's a real dilemma, though, because you can't really control the demand when it comes to paramedic services. And it's the demand, the number of calls they're receiving that each year increased fairly dramatically, well beyond what you'd expect from a population increase. And until we're able to deal with those issues, one, a better triaging, so 3 factors: the triaging of dispatching, improvements of the hospital, and 3, there being more family doctors and walk-in clinics here in Brantford. We're going to face this year after year after year. Budget increases for paramedics that are coming in at 4 to 5 times the rate of inflation. I've said repeatedly at paramedics, this is not sustainable. At some point, you just simply say, no, I don't think we're at that point yet. Because if we don't approve that additional staffed ambulance, it'll have an impact on how fast people can get to the hospital that have very serious medical conditions that need prompt attention. So we don't really have a lot of choice, frankly. much of this beyond our control. My view is that the long-term solution is municipalities should not be paying for paramedics. It's a healthcare cost. It should be uploaded entirely to the province. And of course, AMO and OBCM are advocating for that position, that something that's so clearly related to healthcare costs should not be paid on the property tax base. Anyways, so we have what we have. It's going to have a dramatic impact on our budget. I think, Joelle, will be what, about a 0.5 percentage point increase in taxes for this alone? But it's beyond our control. Yeah, that option one.
Discussion on.
Thank you. Just some clarity. If a new ambulance is approved during the budget process, and I believe it's for July 1st to come in, will you receive delivery of a new vehicle in that time period?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are struggling to getting new vehicles in an expedient way. Some of our vehicles that we usually use an ambulance 5 years on the front line, and we keep it 2 years spare. We've been forced to use an ambulance 6 years and additional spare costs. We've ordered items and ambulances back in 2023 that we're not getting delivery till 24 or into 25. Anything we order as of today will not arrive till March 2026. So that additional ambulance that we'll be using is we will be using one of our spares to be more of a frontline fleet so we can provide the services to the community. However, we are still waiting for delivery on currently right now, I believe 4 ambulances that will not be delivered till later on this year or into 2025.
So the answer is if you order one at the end of this budget process, you won't get it for July 1st, even though that's what we're slotting it for. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. However, we will be using a spare vehicle that we keep in reserve to now be a frontline vehicle to provide the services to the community as of July 1st.
Now, monetarily, does that money have to be in your possession before you can order the vehicle? Is that how the system works?
Through you, Mr. Chair, currently right now working with our vendor, we would have to put a deposit down. And I'm just going to use a round figure for this conversation of $60,000 deposit. And then we would pay the rest upon delivery of the vehicle.
And can the balance be allocated in the fiscal year that you're receiving it, or does it have to be, if it's approved, the purchase can be approved now? Does the funding also have to be approved now? The full amount?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll let General Manager Cindy Stevenson answer that portion.
Through the chair, I can comment on the county's approach to that. And we typically would require that the money be allocated in that capital year so that we have approval to go ahead and make the purchase. Now, just on this particular item for the ambulance itself, that can be potentially funded through development charges. So the county's plan to fund our portion is to do so through development charges.
So then if you can, then obviously we can. So the money would go from our development charges reserve to your development charges reserve and sit there for the 3 or 4 years waiting for the vehicle to come in. Is that how it works? Maybe Joelle can clear up.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's all right. Heather and I might tag team this one.
So in short, even on the city side, if we were purchasing this ambulance, we would need the budget approval before we would even go ahead and place the order. So we would be seeking approval for the full budget. Now, with regards to the development charges, this expansionary vehicle is going to be paid through from development charges. Both the city and the county have a development charges reserve for ambulance, which is going to fund this project. So no impact on operating on when we get the money. Each year, city county does a reconciliation on all shared services. So likely we probably won't be paying money to Heather until she actually incurs the costs. So the money's going to stay in our DC reserve. They make a deposit. We're going to pay our share when it comes on delivery. through our true up process, we'll make payment at that time.
I appreciate that clarity. Thanks, Joelle, because from my perspective, I was concerned that the money is sitting somewhere collecting interest on it, but it's not our interest. So I didn't know whether we deduct that off our portion of the payment or, but it sounds like you've got that under control and I can quit worrying about that.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Counselor Hunt, you have the floor.
Thank you. And through you, I just wanted to clarify that 100% of the expansionary vehicle for additional staffed ambulance also includes the actual four new full-time paramedics that are going to be staffing it. So they're going to start on July 1st, 2025 in what we have right now as a spare vehicle until a new ambulance comes in. So from a budget perspective, the vehicle itself is only a portion of what this is speaking to. I'm not sure if that's for Chief King or Heather. Yes.
Through, I believe that answer would be coming through Heather or General Manager Cindy Stevenson.
Through the chair, based on what you've described, Councillor, I agree with your assessment. The funding for the ambulance and the staffing are separate, but they're both broken down in the report through the decision package. The 4 staff would start on July 1st of 2025.
In an existing vehicle that we have
And
right
it's
now.
air ambulance, correct?
Yeah, okay. And then just the other thing that I wanted to speak to that, and for anybody watching at home, was the, in fact, the mayor referred to the 20% of calls that would be normally seen by a family doctor. And I think one of the best kept secrets out there is to not call 911 and then the additional use of our community paramedic program and trying to hopefully divert people calling 911, getting an ambulance and ending up at the hospital for something that potentially could be dealt with by our community paramedics. So that's my PR shout for for the use of that program. I know Chief King's laughing because I was like, okay, we really need to do some communications to get the word out about that program. But yeah, I think that's the other thing that's important for us to try to do as much as we can to get that information out to the public so that we don't have somebody that is not requiring an emergency and tying up an ambulance for even 3 hours at the emergency department when the community paramedic program could have looked after that particular call. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I just would like to add through you, Mr. Chair, that our community paramedic program since its inception in 2015 applies for every portion of grant funding that we can get our hands on, from either being long-term care to palliative and stuff. That program has grown to almost 10 full-time equivalent employees, servicing over 5,000 people. We'll do our best to keep promoting it, but it's been one of the best things that's happened to our community.
Thank you for that. Councilor Caputo, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions, I guess. In option 2, what exactly does that actually mean? Are we actually having, has the county already approved their end of the budget? Or is there questions we're supposed to ask? If we push option 2, is that going to delay the process this evening and get it into budget? So if I just get some clarity on that.
Sure, through the chair to Councillor Caputo. So option number 2 was in the paramedic shared services agreement between the city and the county. It sets out the process for how this budget works and at which point each council has opportunity to provide input. So last month, the Paramedic Services Committee met. They approved this budget in draft. It's here for us now, or for Estimates Committee, to either approve it in principle or provide any concerns or comments or questions back to the county. The county is going to meet again in November to make final approval on the paramedic services budget. And at that time, they would also be presented with any comments or concerns that this committee had or this council had. They would be presented at that time for them to consider during their deliberation of the final budget. You don't have to provide comments. Option one approves the budget in principle, meaning you're fine to go forward with that.
Okay, thank you.
Let us go to the question on the option before us.
The motion on the amendment carries an unrecorded vote of 9-0. Those councillors voting in favor, councillors Ventilbor, Samuel, Hunt, Carpenter, McCrory, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, and Mayor Davis.
There's an opportunity now to continue the debate on the main motion as amended, if folks wish to speak again. Councillor Celeste?
Not a debate, just a question if I could, because I don't have the figures in front of me. Probably best through to Joelle. Joelle, how does this final increase compare to the 4-year budget that was presented last year? How do they compare?
Through the chair to Councillor Celeste. So the paramedic services budget goes through a completely different process and falls outside of the multi-year budget.
So it's not part of that process at all?
Right. However, when city staff did present the multi-year budget, we did make some assumptions, but they were based on inflation. So there are added enhancements in this budget that are going to have an impact, yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And I don't see any other requests to speak, so we'll go to the vote on the motion as amended.
Item 4.1 carries on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those councillors voting in favor, councillors Ventilbor, Samuel, Hunt, Carpenter, McCrory, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, and Mayor Davis.
Thank you, committee members. Thank you, guests, for coming today or being online today for your assistance. We are adjourned on this one. We'll take a couple of minute break and then we'll come back with round 2.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get started on the finance meeting now, folks. Again, thank you for being here today. One, you have the attendance,
Through the chair, yes. Roll call.
declarations of conflicts of interest. I see none at hand. Can I get a mover and seconder for all the stuff before us today? Moved by Counselor Sullivan, seconded by Counselor Caputo. Separations, folks. What do you want to separate out of this for discussion today? Counselor Hunt, please go ahead.
522 flood grants.
Counselor Van Tilburg,
521.
we'll go ahead and vote on the minutes.
The approval of the minutes carries on a recorded vote of 5-0. Those councillors voting in favor, councillors Ventilborn, Hunt, McCreary, Caputo, and Sullivan.
Thank you for that. Counselor Van Tilburg, you have the floor, sir, for 5.2.1.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question. I would like some clarification on section G, where it's talking about the tax rate reductions on farmland. And phase one, it says 25% of residential tax rate. So my question is, what was the tax rate on farmland versus the tax rate on residential? What's the difference between residential with a 3/4 75% reduction versus farmland at full? What's the what would be the difference in value?
Through the chair. So these aren't farm properties. They are properties that fall in a different tax class that do have some farming on it. And we don't have any of these properties are in the city. We just each year have to pass.
Hardy Roads is farmed. We have property that Sifton owns in Hardy Road that gets farmed. It's been rezoned, and I would imagine that's at phase two now.
Yeah.
But we do run into that, and we have a lot of territory that we've acquired that would be farmland.
Yeah, and those are all in the farmland tax class. This is referring to property that would be like in a commercial or industrial tax class that
On farmland, that would be changed.
if they own like land that they're farming
Okay.
in addition to their
Yeah.
land.
Okay,
And
so
there aren't any in this.
Yes, it's common for when they acquire when they acquire the more rural areas of the city, they continue to farm until they're ready to go. We see that fairly frequently. So whether they're farming or not, my question is, okay, how about this then? If we're doing that, why is there a 75% tax break on residential?
That's from the province. It's mandatory. That has to be that farm is taxed at 25% of the residential tax rate.
So is farmland then considered 25% residential? Is that just what it is? Or is that a separate category as well?
It's a separate tax class, but it is 25% of
Okay, so it is a wash. It's semantics then when I'm looking at the wording farmland versus the residential at that phase. Or am I wrong? I'm just trying to figure out if this is farmland that's been rezoned as residential but is not yet being built.
No, this doesn't have to do anything with residential land. What's in this policy is strictly for commercial or industrial property classes that may happen to have some farmland, some land that they're farming, but there aren't any in the city like this.
Okay, and then when we get to the second part, my screen keeps flipping on me, unfortunately. Then on phase two, where it says oh, this is frustrating, but where it says there's a 0% on the farmland, but it's phase two, what does that actually mean? It says a 0% reduction. So what is the tax rate? Is it a tax rate on residential? On something that's been zoned, something that's being built? I don't follow this. There'd be zero reduction on phase two for commercial residential at the so at the residential rate.
Yeah.
Counselor, that's time. We'll wait for the response.
Again, yeah, this is just, would be farmland awaiting development phase two, which would be like currently in the commercial or industrial tax class of which there aren't any. And in my 15 years here, we haven't ever seen a single property in.
Thank you. Counselor Carpenter, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guthrie. 15 years. Congratulations. And congratulations on this file. You really have taken it up. You really do understand it. So I just want to ask a question on the reduction in the tax ratios. We reduced the commercial tax ratio, the industrial tax ratio, and the multi-residential tax ratio. My understanding is once we reduce them, we can't go above that limit. Would that be correct?
Yeah, once you reduce the ratio, you cannot increase it.
And we're reducing the ratio based upon the growth within those particular classes, right?
Yeah, it's based on the assessment growth in the three different
Now,
classes.
reducing the ratio, isn't that optional for us?
It is optional. In, I think it was 2022 and 2023, council decided not to decrease it, but has done, we
Okay, so
decreased it last year.
My question would be, what would we be making this decision now, which we can't undo? Before we find out what the final budget number is going to be. When we find out what the final budget number is going to be, we can't roll residential taxes across the classes or across all classes once they're frozen. That's my understanding.
Through the chair to Councillor Carpenter. We did just include the information on this report because it ultimately will become part of the final bylaw. All these other matters in here, we really didn't want to get muddied up at estimates time. That's why we're dealing with them now. But we will include in our report to the estimates committee in November what the impact of implementing specifically the tax ratio reduction policy and what that will be, because we will have final assessment growth numbers by the time that happens.
Estimates. That's all I wanted to be sure of. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Van Tilburg, was there anything else you wanted to speak to before we go to the vote on this?
I'm well content. If any have any questions, I think I will email them from here on. Thank you, Chair.
We'll go to the question on this then. I didn't see any other requests to speak.
Item 521 carries on a recorded vote of 5-0. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillors Ventilborg, Hunt, McCrory, Caputo, and Sullivan.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, you have the floor. Please proceed with 522.
Thank you, and through you to staff. So when council passed the resolution on August 27th, I'm wondering, were we provided the information in terms of the eligible work and grant amounts? And the reason I'm questioning is that we allowed for $5,000 in 2017, $5,000 per claim. And I've heard from some constituents that they've had installation of backwater valves done that have cost more than $3,000, and yet they're not getting the full amount based on this table, the 2024 eligible work and grant amounts.
Through the chair to Councillor Hunt. So when this matter came before council, it really was just seeking approval for the residential compassionate grant program, which is not the prevention, the flooding prevention program, but rather a compassionate grant to assist homeowners who suffered damage related to the flood event. At that meeting, there was some friendly amendments made to also include us providing funding for the basement flooding prevention program. So in response to that, with the quick turnaround, staff did open up the program with the same parameters that had been in place when we ran it previously. I can turn it over to Selby and she can talk more about the specifics of that prevention program.
Thank you, Joelle. Selvi Conguera, Director of Environmental Services. Through you, Chair, to the councillor, in 2018, the basement flooding prevention grant program was implemented. And at the time, we had the backwater valve. The maximum grant amount approved in 2018 per property was $2,000. And we had categories of each and every eligible work that we have listed in this report. And each of them had a maximum dollar amount, and which was a lot lower because the maximum eligible was 2,000. And we've adjusted the numbers now because the eligible amount has been changed or approved by council is 5,000 instead of $2,000. Hope, is that answer your question, Councillor Hunt?
Yeah, but I think the question is if they're allowed, it was this table 1, the eligible work and grant amounts. I don't believe we saw that when we passed the resolution in August. And so the feedback that we're getting now is that installation of the backwater, specifically a number of them that we've got, is the installation of that check valve, if it's done properly, costs $5,000, but they're only being reimbursed $3,000, although the amount per claim could be up to $5,000. So basically, what I'm getting at is they're putting in the proper check valve at the front of the house, and then they're getting with I think the understanding that they can apply for the $5,000 grant, and then they're only getting $3,000.
Through you, Chair, this table was not there because this basement flooding grant program was not part of the approval of the resolution in August 27th. So, but the thing is, through negotiate or friendly amendments, it was brought up that the 2018 program be implemented in 2024. So the table is from the original 2018 program. So, Councillor, what's the change from the past to now is that in the 2018 year, backwater valves were installed inside the basement in the sanitary, and that was the way it was approved in 2018. What's new in 2024 is that we are seeing some residents installing the backwater valve outside the home on the storm pipe, on their storm lateral outside the home, which means they have to dig 6 to 8 feet deep, and it is costing them more than $3,000.
And that is the safer way to install?
Councillor Caputo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question to Joelle, I guess. What's our current balance of council priority reserves?
Through the chair, if this allocation was approved, there would be approximately 820,000 remaining.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Go ahead, please.
I want to thank Salvi first for all the work on this. When we brought it to council, we weren't aware, or we've forgotten that there's 2 different programs, and that's where the confusion lied. And then the installation of a backwater valve inside is on the sanitary system, which very rarely has a problem. In fact, it has nothing to do with the stormwater. So you've got 2 lines coming in your house, one that goes underneath the house to that drain in your basement that everybody thinks is a stormwater drain. It's not, it's a sanitary drain. And the stormwater drain goes to the weeping tile around the bottom footings of your house. And when that's overwhelmed because the city's capacity to take the water in our stormwater isn't sufficient in older neighborhoods, it backflows into your house, but it actually follows the gravel path of the sanitary sewer because it's the easiest path of resistance when clay's been compacted or dirt's been compacted. Still got gravel around there, and people think that that water from outside is coming up their sanitary sewer, which they assume then is a storm sewer. So in 2018, many of those people took advantage of that grant and put a check valve on the sanitary sewer. And then they assumed that it broke this year when their basement flooded because it's a different line altogether and it's totally different. So we've had some meetings with Salvia. I've had some meetings with her and staff, and we've worked this out. And this is this program is overwhelmingly supported. And Salvia's got a program going forward each year to make sure we can do preventative work on the budget and preventative work in the homes of the areas where we have this problem going on. And we should be able to, over the years, rectify it long term. So I hope everybody would support this. It's working very well. We've had to do some understanding of what the original resolution was. It may be my fault and Dr. McCurry's fault. We didn't quite understand that we had the two grant programs that we needed to sort of, probably could have been better if we had met with you first and had a discussion about how we can make that actually work in the wording. But we worked that out here with this resolution. So thank you.
And I was very pleased to let Councillor Carpenter do all the heavy lifting on this fall. Councillor Hunt, was there anything else you wanted to speak to before we go to the question on this?
No, and but thank you to Selby for that.
Okay. Let's go.
A little more clarification, if I may. So
How many times have you spoken?
that's my second time.
You sure?
But so the outside pump on this storm sewer has a $5,000 limit at 80%. Would that be correct? Okay, yeah, all right, just want to be
Through
clear.
you, Chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
Sorry, Counselor, that amendment has to be made, right? Amendment has to be made now,
Does it need to be made here now?
right?
And that amendment needs to be, Joel? Or that the installation of some,
I can send it to you.
the installation of a,
Got that.
I can. forward.
Sylvia, you're talking about an amendment in the eligible maximum?
Right, through Mr. Chair, that's correct. So an amendment is to add the eligible work table, installation of a backwater valve outside the home, which will have an amount maximum up to 5,000 or 80% of the actual cost. I can send the amendment to one.
I can't move amendment as not a member of this committee, but
Councillor Sullivan is the mover, apparently. Who's the seconder? Councillor Caputo is the seconder. Councillor Hunt, go ahead, please. Just on the amendment, yeah.
Oh, no, I was just gonna second.
Councillor Caputo was far quicker off the mark because he's right beside me. Okay, so we'll go to the question on the amendment first. Thank you.
The amendment carries on a recorded vote of 5-0. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillors Ventilboard, Hunt, McCreary, Caputo, and Sullivan.
And now we'll go to the vote on the original resolution as amended.
Item 522 has amended, carries on a recorded vote of 5-0. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillors Ventilboard, Hunt, McCreary, Caputo, and Sullivan.
We have no further business. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.